Welcome to the I Work For Him podcast. I'm Michael Miracle, producer of the I Work For Him radio program, the voice of the faith and work movement. Our mission is to transform the workplace of every Christian into a mission field. What does that look like in your workplace? Let's find out right now.
Hey, you've tuned into I Work For Him, the mouthpiece of the faith and work movement. We're your hosts, Jim and Martha Brangenberg.
Thanks for being with us today. I just want to remind you that you can check out all of our interviews on YouTube. I Work For Him I don't know why I said .com because it's just I Work For Him.
iworkforhim.com.
Yes, but for YouTube, you have to go to YouTube and then look for I Work For Him. And there you will be able to watch many of our interviews.
You did it really
That's
well.
It.
That's okay. All right. So if there's one thing that's certain, married couples who own a business or run a nonprofit have more stress to work through in their marriage than couples who do not. It doesn't matter if both parts of the couple work in the business or not. When you own a business in your marriage, it impacts your marriage. Marriage is work. And we've addressed that many times on I Work For Him. If your marriage is struggling, so does all of your life tend to be a struggle. If your marriage is a mess, it impacts everything you do and say. We as Jesus followers are supposed to be working on our marriages because they are to be a witness to our pre-believer friends that are all around us. Our marriages are to be a light. So how do we deal with the tension in our marriages caused by a business or an organization? Here to help us parse through the conversation is Robert and Kaylee Fukui. They run a biznistry called PowerCouplesByDesign.com. PowerCouplesByDesign.com. Robert and Kaylee, welcome to I Work For Him.
Hey, Jim, you got my last name right.
Yay.
Congratulations.
It's an honor to be here with you guys today.
Well, we're
That's
excited to
awesome,
have you
yeah.
guys here, and we're super excited about the connection, and we love the fact, even though you're West Coast, we're East Coast, we could still be part of the kingdom of God together. We're still part of the same body of Christ. Even though you're in California, we heard there were Christians in California. It's great to meet you.
Yeah, we're the two.
All right, Robert and Kaylee, how did you two get passionate about helping business owners or business owning married couples thrive and not dive? I mean, where did this come from?
Well, that's a long story, but basically childhood, essentially. I think we're both products of entrepreneur couples in a different way. Kaylee's dad was an entrepreneur. My dad was a pastor, but pastor and business owners deal with the same
thing,
host of issues. And we're products of the fact that they worked really hard at their thing, the business, the ministry. And a lot of times what happens is the family, the marriage, the spouse, the kids kind of take a back seat. I mean, not intentionally, but just because of the dedication to the work. And we just didn't want to see that happen as we started getting into our own business. And we did about 2 years of counseling before we got married. We did 2 years of, marriage counseling or premarital counseling. I mean, just counseling, just to really help us deal with the issues most marriages deal with after the fact by trial and error. So we were really blessed to get tools up front before we got married. And when we started to go into business, you notice, hey, we can do this because we know how to work through things. Regardless of the issues, if you know how to work through things, deal with conflict, and really know how to create win-win scenarios and really think about we, not me, then you can do anything, whether you work together or not in a business. And so really, I guess the answer is really kind of started from our childhood, just seeing that and then seeing it with the business consulting clients that we had before we really focus on what we're doing right now with married couples in business. Just seeing how, when they're married, just seeing how business affects the marriage and marriage affects the business. And you can't compartmentalize the two. So we decided, hey, we need to focus on this because this is an issue that's not being dealt with.
And that
because a lot of times, for us growing up, the business or the ministry became the mistress of the family. And it can be really challenging when you don't have that balance.
For sure. And
so true.
And we're really going to dive into that, but I'm excited for anybody who has known Jim and I for any length of time. They're going to already understand why we have you on the show today, because you're speaking our language. We have said for years this whole, when your marriage is a mess, your business struggles. And if your business is struggling or you have stress there, you bring it home, it affects your marriage. They are very intertwined as entrepreneurs. So to have somebody that is really focusing on helping the working couple work on their marriage is just such an amazing niche. And I'm really excited for us to delve into that. Can we talk right now about what it is you actually do? What is Power Couples by Design?
Well, we're essentially a hybrid of marriage and business coaches. I mean, we started really business consulting, helping the entrepreneur really become more efficient, become more profitable and sustainable, and not having to work so hard. I mean, we were doing that from the beginning. I mean, we just saw the need of what typical small family business were dealing with. And coming from the corporate Fortune 500 background, I could see the typical small business owner was just working way too hard for the return because they're just not efficient. There are just not systems in place. They're just, you just learn by doing. I mean, most entrepreneurs really they're good at a craft and they just start charging for it is what happens. And so we saw that gap already. And then when we started hearing about what was going on in their family life, it's like, hey, we started naturally coaching. And a lot of it because of our background going through 2 years of counseling ourselves. And so we were just kind of passing on what worked for us and what we learned in counseling. And then we just decided 3 years ago, I said, I think there's a thing here. There's a recurring theme as more and more of our clients are opening up about the personal life. We're like, hey, I think there's an issue here.
So Kaylee, what was that issue that you see as the typical experience of this business owning married couple?
I think part of the issue was, at least in my family growing up, we weren't on the same page. There were like two different lives. The business is over here. And for some reason, we have I don't know what it is. I see this a lot with small business. It's like the mentality is we just have to work harder. We work harder. That's the answer for everything. At least that's how it was for me growing up. We work harder. And so then the family suffers. And so you have two different compartments as opposed to working alongside each other. Like if I know Robert has to work a lot of hours in the next upcoming week or so, then we plan that out accordingly. And I'm okay with that. But it's like when you're going two different directions, it's really hard to get on the same page.
And the irony of that too, the working harder in the business to get it working better, is they don't do it for the marriage, right? If we see the problem in the business, we're going to try to figure out a way to fix it. In a marriage side, you hear the problems, your spouse will say something, the kids might complain or whatever. There's a problem, but you just don't have the same passion of going in and fixing it, figuring out what it is and fixing that and work harder in the marriage.
Yeah.
There's not a
so
P&L
really kind of
for the
both back to both sides.
There's not a P&L for the marriage, so it's a lot harder to see, okay, we don't have any cash flow, but when you don't have any emotions or any of that, kindness even left for your spouse, it's past time to work on that.
We've seen a pattern where the business, just like you said, the business owners or organizational leaders like a pastor will focus on the fires at work. And if there's a fire, they respond to the fire, but they won't respond at home until the spouse says, it's done.
Burning down.
Right. It's on. It's
Right.
burning down. And a lot of times it's not too late, but it's going to be significantly more work to bring it back to restoration than it would have been if they'd have just been working on it all along. Hey, we're talking today with Robert and Kaylee Fukui from PowerCouplesByDesign.com, PowerCouplesByDesign.com, working with married couples who run businesses and organizations to protect their marriage from their business and their business from their marriage, but to understand that they're intertwined. We'll be right back with more on I Work for Him. Let's face it, there's only so much you can accomplish in a day, right?
As a busy leader, countless distractions are vying for your time. And making it harder is that these distractions are often important things, but maybe not the best use of your time or passions.
You need help living out your God-given purpose, and thankfully, our friends at Belay offer just that.
Belay, an innovative staffing solution with over 10 years of experience, has successfully matched thousands of organizations with part-time virtual assistants, bookkeepers, and social media strategists.
With Belay's help, you can delegate to someone who has the skills to execute faster and more efficiently, leaving you to do what only you can do. Fulfill your purpose and be the faithful steward you are called to be.
To learn more, just text 4HIM to 55123. Again, that's the number 4HIM to 55123.
Hey, welcome back to I Work for Him as we talk with Robert and Kaylee Fukui today from Power Couples by Design, PowerCouplesByDesign.com. We wanted to bring you guys on because you guys are seeing stuff that we've seen. Martha and I have been doing marriage mentoring for 21 years. And what we have seen is that entrepreneurial couples and couples that run churches or Christian nonprofit organizations tend to have significantly more marital issues than couples that both have 9-to-5s. Not that anybody has a 9-to-5 anymore, but essentially they don't own what they do every day.
I was going to say traditional, but there is no traditional anymore either. So,
how do you guys you work with all different kinds of marriages. What is the typical struggle? Like, is there a specific thing that a business owning couple or a pastor and his or her spouse, or an organizational leader, is there a typical struggle that they're not dealing with that's causing their marriage troubles at home?
I think it's knowing how to deal with conflict.
Conflict resolution.
I mean,
okay.
Conflict resolution. If you know how to deal with conflict, as we talked about in the first section, when you know how to work together and deal with conflict and address the issue to both levels of satisfaction, not just I'm going to let them win this time or it's whatever, then you can do anything and you can overcome any obstacle. Because when it comes to marriage, when it comes to business, there's always going to be challenges, right? And there's always going to be situations to have to come to agreement on. And that's the crux of what drives a wedge in the most relationships is there's some certain things that can't get resolved and it gets pushed under the rug, or you don't talk about it, or whenever we do talk about it, it just becomes another thing. So you just try to avoid it.
What if you have laminate?
So there's certain topics.
What if you don't have any rug?
What if you have laminate?
Well, you might have a rug on top of
You slide it on top of the laminate.
Oh, then it just goes into the cracks or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just wondering. Because I'm Midwest, we did have carpet, but
you have this room of all these huge things that you can't talk about, all these hot topics that nothing gets resolved. And so then it's like, well, we can't talk about that. We can't talk about that. And then you try not to hit that hot button. And it's just, you see 30 years later, they still got the same issues. It's kind of sad.
Yeah. So that's really the common thing. And then everything flows from that. Because like we talked about, if there's challenges in the business that flows into the marriage, someone's going to bring it up, right? Usually the spouse, and typically, even if both spouses are working in the business, usually the wife is really worried about the family, right? And then so that it get brought up, connection, intimacy and all that, those things get brought up, but then they just don't know how to resolve things because it's like, well, we got to work because it pays the bills and all this stuff. And so there's this constant back and forth. There's this power struggle between then marriage and business. But if you know how to listen to each other and just take the, you're right, I'm wrong thing, or I'm right, you're wrong, and you started, whatever, it's your fault, whatever, and bring up all the past issues that came up. When you really know how to really resolve things, those things go away because you've resolved it, you've settled it, you've come to agreement, and you're moving forward. Conflict resolution is.
And then that way your spouse is not also feeling like they're fighting or competing with the business all the time to get your attention, to get money, whatever it is, time.
So I'm curious, I'm the kind of person that likes to know what it looks like. So if you're working with a couple, do you take something safe like their financials and then
finances are
safe? I'm trying to, that's easier than it's easier than emotions, but something that they're dealing with in the business, and then teach them how to deal with conflict resolution around that? Or do you just dive right into, hey, what are you struggling with? Or, what does that look like for you to work with a couple?
I think sometimes, like, for example, we'll use like pricing, like say they're struggling with their margins and they're having a hard time making a living. And that affects both of the couples, right? And so then we'll go in and Robert will help them with the pricing strategy and all that. So one couple is like ready to make a profit so they can support the family. And the other one's like, oh, I don't know about that. I'm a little leery. What if, all these what ifs, and it stirs up stuff in that person. And that can cause conflict, which a lot of times that stem to someone's identity. Like, well, maybe they don't think they're worth to charge the going rate or to make a profit, so they can work less hours to be there with their family more and to reinvest back into their business.
Hey, go ahead.
Yeah, and that's sometimes a big topic. So I think what you're alluding to Martha, we'll start with like a little smaller issue. What's a typical, what's a typical challenge or argument, right? And so the first thing we do is give them tools to know how to work through things, to deal with conflict. And the first thing we do is really have them assess themselves. It's like, look, you're both the problem and the solution when it comes to an argument. It doesn't matter what the issue is and who brought it up, but the way you respond or the way you introduce an issue can trigger your spouse,
Or diffuse it.
And then again, yes, no matter who started it or who's right or wrong, you can also diffuse it, regardless of who started it. And so really understanding, number one, how they're wired, how their spouse is wired, and how the way they communicate can trigger each other. That's the first step to understanding how to resolve conflict so they can be a little more self-aware of those things. And we'll pick a small topic and then go for there. So we'll talk with the marriage stuff, and then eventually we do move into the business as Kenny was talking about.
Excellent. So I am a cup half full person, or full to overflowing if Jim was to explain it. So I really love this. Kaylee, you guys have an 8-step thing to thriving marriage and a prosperous business. And I love that because it's talking about the positive, right? It's not 8 steps to, avoid something. So can you walk us through those 8 steps? Do we have time to talk about all of them? All right. Can you list? Do you have that list in front of you?
Yeah. Well, we know by heart.
Oh, you know it by heart. Good. I wasn't sure.
Because to answer your question, this is the crux of what we do. The 8 steps. This is the 8 steps we take all of our clients through.
Excellent.
And it's divided into 2 sections: the marriage side and then the business side. So 4 steps in the marriage, 4 steps in the business. On the marriage side, it's kind of what I started saying is really about first understanding how to deal with conflict. Giving you tools and guidelines to deal with any issue. And then on the business side, it's really about how to work smarter, not harder, as we kind of started how we started this conversation. So when you get to that point, then you can, then your marriage and your business will thrive. But the first one is really just, like I said, knowing yourself. What I talked about earlier.
And that's so powerful. I love that. So the 8 steps on the marriage side: know yourself, getting to the root, prevent and resolve conflict well, and create a unified vision. Then on the business side, discover opportunities, identify your gaps, get the right people in the right seats, or get them off the bus. And I added that part.
I could tell.
Simplify the plan. What I love about this, Robert and Kaylee, is that you're not just working with believers in this. This is a solution you're bringing to couples who run businesses and organizations. And because it's a kingdom-focused program, it works for everybody. Because of your faith in Jesus, everybody around you is benefiting from your faith and your investment in their marriage. They don't have to believe in Jesus to have the solution to their marriage, although it would be a lot easier if they knew Jesus to make their marriage a safe thing. Yeah. We're talking with Robert and Kaylee Fukui from PowerCouplesByDesign.com. PowerCouplesByDesign.com. When we come back, we're going to hear a little bit more personally about what are some of the things they've learned while they've helped other people. You're listening to I Work For Him. We'll be right back.
Want to build a profitable side hustle that impacts people with truth and healing in themselves and their leadership? Then look at becoming a certified leadership coach with Giant. Giant has been in the leadership space for over 13 years and has over 500 coaches in over 127 countries. Their coaches are being hired by Fortune 500 companies and organizations like I Work For Him. Jim and I took the Giant Sherpa training under one of these great coaches to become leaders worth following. Giant gives you everything you need to start your own coaching business from scratch, like hands-on training from top-level coaches, access to an all-in-one online platform to run your entire coaching business, and you get to join a thriving community of coaches around the world. To get started, Giant is hosting a coaching business workshop to help you learn how to build a successful coaching business. This workshop is 100% free, and you can reserve your spot by going to giant.tv/I Work For Him. If you're ready to impact people and get paid to do it, go to giant.tv/I Work For Him. That's giant.tv/I Work For Him.
Hey, welcome back to I Work For Him. We're talking with Robert and Kaylee Fukui from PowerCouplesByDesign.com. Okay, so you're helping other couples, and how often, as you're helping them through, do people go, "Are you guys religious or something? Is there, how often do people call you out and say, hey, is there like some Jesus thing in here somewhere? Because it's got to come in, because God, in marital struggles, people get reduced to their bare core. in order to be able to solve a marriage. How often do you get a chance to share your faith?
I mean, from the beginning, I mean, we don't hold back. I mean, even though we're dealing with a lot of non-Christian clients as well, we're open about who we are. I mean, we don't want to, it's truth in advertisement, right? It's like, look, this is what we do. This is how we can help you. Now, part of the assessments and stuff that we put them through, there's a book called Identifying Your Sweet Spot, or Identifying Your Sweet Spot by Pam and
Tom Wolfe.
Pam Wolfe and
Identity,
Tom Wolfe, yes, exactly.
identityandDestiny.com.
That's right. Destiny. Yep. Yeah, we used their book because there's 4 assessments we use in there. So I said, look, here's the book. Why don't you take these 4 assessments in here? There is a number of biblical references. We're not trying to evangelize you per se, but the stuff works. so I said, so.
And how often do people just tell you to? How often do people tell you to pound sand and say, "I'm not gonna"?
So far, none. So far, none.
I mean, we're upfront about it. We don't lie. It's not like they open it up and then find out. It's like we tell them.
Yeah, because in our opinion, there's no such thing as a true atheist.
Right.
There's usually, and I've actually had a conversation with an atheist, there's usually something that just turns them off from Christianity.
Right.
Exactly. So everybody's been exposed to it, right? So it's not like a foreign language by any means. But we're not sitting there evangelizing per se, but we're using tools that come from the Bible. But we have really application to what they're dealing with. So in our experience, whenever they see the application to what they're dealing with and it fixes it, they don't care where it came from.
Right. Especially in the secular world. If you're doing something and it's successful and it's working in the business world, people, that's what they want.
Right. Which opens up the doors for those kind of conversations, because now we're not just preaching to them, right? We're actually showing them real time how the Bible works in their life and in their business. So we haven't had anyone turn us down so far.
And our listeners have heard us talk a lot about that process with finding your sweet spot with identity and destiny. So we know firsthand the success that has, and the awakening that it has to people learning about themselves and that path that they're going on. So I can see where that would work so very well. So tell us about the podcast you guys do and what it is that you talk about and how often it's released.
So the name of it is Power Up Your Marriage and Business, and it's every week. And kind of as the title suggests, it's how do you get your marriage and your business up, really in a sweet spot, really thriving and humming. So it's released every week, and we talk about the issues we're talking about right now. And it's half of the episodes are kind of us talking, and the other half are really interviewing people like we're going to interview you, right? So we just bring in other experts, other people that have experienced similar things to really lay out the challenges and how they've overcome it. So to give tools to our listeners. So yeah, we deal with everything that we just talked about.
Kaylee, does he let you talk on the podcast?
Yes, he does let me talk.
That's nice. That's nice. All right, you guys got other free resources on your website. What are they?
You want to go ahead? See, now I don't want to talk.
He's like, I must have been talking too much. I'm not going to talk now.
Power Couples by Design is our website, and you can go there. We have all of our free resources. We have the 8 steps there. We have a quiz there that you can take. That's a lot of fun to see where you're spending your time. And yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, the 8 steps we're talking about that you asked us about, that guide, just go right to the homepage and you can just download it from there. And then, of course, we got our podcast is on there. We got some weekly videos that we put out. We got free virtual events that come out once a quarter.
Yeah, we have one coming up.
Marriage and business. Yeah, we have one coming out on marketing specifically. So we have a lot of stuff that we talk about. We also offer a lot of free stuff on there as well, besides just the coaching and even the online courses that we offer.
All right,
we really want your business to be successful.
So powercouplesbydesign.com is the website where you can find all of those resources. So Robert and Kaylee, let's get personal for a moment. What is it that God has shown you in your own marriage that you want to share with the audience today? What is something He's taught you or revealed that you really believe that others need to hear as well?
Yeah, I'll let my wife go first.
What comes to mind when you say that is to try and be like in the other person's shoes, because my first response is, if I'm upset, is I want to defend myself and I want to tell you all the reasons and I don't want to listen because I'm like trying to think in my mind, what am I going to say next to one up them, And so the Lord just says, you know what, try and be open and see things from Robert's point of view as opposed to trying to force him to come over to my box.
Yeah, and for us, it's just our story. So our story separately, collectively, I think is the key of how we're helping people. Everything that we're talking about really just comes from our own experiences as well, and just really embracing. What we even help, like with our couples do, we do the same. Try to have to do the same thing. It's interesting when you're teaching people. It really holds you more accountable. And so the things that God has revealed in us, a lot of time is when we're coaching other people, the couples.
Especially sometimes right before you get on a call, it's like, Robert's like, oh no, do we really have to resolve this right now before we get on this call?
Yes, you
really
do.
Testing our ability to resolve conflict.
Oh, yeah.
That has actually happened.
Yes.
When we did a pilot with 4 couples. We did a pilot for this whole program with 4 couples. And 5 minutes before we're getting on the Zoom call, Kaylee brings up an issue. And I look at her and I'm like, really, right now? You couldn't have waited until after the call. And so in 5 minutes, we had to test our ability to resolve conflict to be able to come on with a true smiley face and then say, let us tell you what we just went through.
To be authentic.
And this is why you need the tools.
That's right. PowerCouplesByDesign.com, PowerCouplesByDesign.com. If you run your own business, if you happen to run a church, if you happen to run an organization, and it's impacting your marriage, which, by the way, it is, you need to check out Robert and Kaylee Fukui at Power Couples by Design. You need to have them help them walk alongside you to get things worked out, figure out how to work through conflict, figure out how to make sure that your business or your organization doesn't become a mistress to your marriage. Thank you, Robert and Kaylee, for being here on I Work For Him today.
You're welcome. It's our pleasure.
Yes, thank you.
Again, check them out online, PowerCouplesByDesign.com. You've been listening to I Work For Him with your hosts, Jim and Martha Brangenberg. We're Christ followers. Our workplace, it's our mission field. But ultimately, I work for Him.
Did you know that God has a calling on your life? It's true. He's called you to bring Jesus to the world. For some, that may look like a pulpit or a foreign mission field, but for most of us, it looks like a construction site, a cubicle, a hospital, or a classroom. Wherever it is that you work, live, volunteer, and invest, that is your mission field. To learn more about integrating your faith into your work and retirement, check out our books, I Work For Him, She Works For Him, and I Retire For Him by going to iworkforhim.com/bookstore.
Thank you for listening to the I Work For Him podcast with your hosts, Jim and Martha Brangenberg. Please visit iworkforhim.com to learn more about connecting your faith and work, to join the I Work For Him Nation, or subscribe to our weekly blog. You can also follow us on social media at I Work For Him to stay up to date and meet our guests. If today's message spoke to you, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast platform. Your review will launch more workplace missionaries across America. That's at I Work For Him and online, iworkforhim.com. I work the number 4him.com.